The movie begins with a montage of the vibrant glamour scene, featuring people, especially women, fixated on their appearance and beauty. Teenagers and adults idolize the radiant and mesmerizing beauty of famous models, wishing to attain even a fraction of such attractiveness. Captivated by the glitz and glamour of TV commercials and magazine covers, they are oblivious to the darker side of the modeling industry. In the midst of all this, we encounter Liliko, a young model admired as a beauty icon throughout Japan. She captivates people with her seemingly effortless charm and stunning appearance. Little do they realize, Liliko has done extensive surgery to sculpt her body into its current form. She is still unhappy with herself in spite of her glamorous life. She's aware that her beauty will fade with time, only to be replaced by someone new and youthful. However, she struggles to come to terms with the idea that someone else could replace her. We're then introduced to Detective Mr. Asada, who carefully studies photos of Liliko and reflects on her fame. He tells his colleague that stardom is like a disease that slowly erodes a person from within. The colleague mentions how high school girls idolize Liliko and want to imitate her looks. However, Mr. Asada sees beyond Liliko's facade and asserts that beauty doesn't equate to happiness. He argues that models like Liliko may appear flawless from the outside, but internally, their reality is often far from glamorous. Later, the colleague asks about a specific clinic while examining photos of mutilated women with severe bruising all over their bodies. She asks about any progress or new leads in their investigation. Mr. Asada then reveals that the clinic in question is involved in numerous crimes, ranging from tax evasion to illegal activities such as trafficking children's organs and drugs. The scene then shifts to Liliko at a press conference for her debut movie. She smiles and poses beside her female co-star, claiming they have now become best friends. The next day, she boils with anger upon seeing her co-star featured with her on the magazine cover. Her demeanor changes drastically off-camera, and she reveals her true nature. Liliko is incredibly disrespectful towards her assistant, Hada, and frequently shouts at her over petty matters. In one instance, she angrily spits water in Hada's face simply because it was too cold for her liking. Poor Hada and the makeup artist Kinji put up with her selfish and rude behavior for the sake of their jobs. Shortly after, Liliko's boyfriend Nanbu walks in with a large bouquet for her. The staff quickly leave the room, waiting awkwardly outside while the couple have sex in the dressing room. Later that night, Liliko sleeps with a producer, hoping he will feature her on magazine covers. After he leaves, she calls her manager, whom she affectionately calls Mama. This manager happens to be her sponsor and arranges her gigs. Liliko nervously informs that she did as she was told and shares that she slept with the producer. Mama reassures her and asserts that she always has her best interests at heart. Upon returning home, Liliko stands before a mirror and admires herself as usual. She believes herself to be more beautiful than anyone else, but suddenly, something catches her eye. Liliko begins to scream in horror as she notices a large bruise on her forehead. The following day, Kinji informs Mama about mysterious bruises on Liliko's skin. Mama reveals that these bruises are a result of Liliko's plastic surgery and that almost everything about her appearance is fake. She then bribes Kinji with an expensive ruby ring and asks him to keep this secret. She also asks him to support Liliko until the end, now that he knows the truth about her beauty. Afterward, Liliko visits a beauty clinic with Mama to deal with her scarring. The doctor then reassures her that they will operate again and correct the issues. Moments later, she notices a bruised woman screaming at the top of her lungs as the staff try to calm her down. Liliko watches nervously as the woman accuses the clinic of ruining her and demands that the doctor fix the damage on her face immediately. When the doctor is informed about the situation, she blames the woman instead for missing her regular touch-ups and treatments. Mama then asks her to prescribe something stronger for Liliko, who reluctantly proceeds with another surgery. In the meantime, Mr. Asada and his colleagues examine a photograph related to the recent death of a model named Megumi. They speculate that she died due to the beauty clinic's negligence following her plastic surgery. Mr. Asada then reveals that Megumi's ex-husband, who is also a doctor, teamed up with the clinic's director to illegally obtain organs, skin, and muscles for cosmetic procedures. He explains that patients need to take lifelong suppressant drugs after these surgeries, otherwise they will have deadly side effects. Mr. Asada bluntly states that models relentlessly pursue fame and flawless beauty, which often leads to such fatal consequences. Elsewhere, Liliko continues to rise as a sensational beauty icon, appearing in photo shoots, TV shows, interviews, and more. Anything she features in or endorses instantly sells out. She soars to the peak of fame and becomes everyone's dream girl. However, the spotlight begins to affect her, and her selfishness and arrogance escalate to new levels. One night, Hada drives Liliko home after a photo shoot. She drinks heavily, leaving Hada to clean up after her as she clumsily enters her home. Liliko then sits in front of the mirror and reflects on her fame as Hada reminds her of the millions of fans who adore her. However, she asserts that her fans only love the image they see on the outside, knowing nothing about her true self. Liliko continues to admire herself in the mirror while Hada quietly tidies up around her. Suddenly, Liliko notices more bruises on her face. She becomes distraught, realizing that losing her looks could put her popularity at risk as well. Overwhelmed with fear and anger, she rants about how her career will end once her beauty fades and how people will eventually forget about her. Hada tries to comfort her, but Liliko pushes her away and asks if she's truly beautiful. She then begins to flirt with Hada and even kisses her. Drunk with booze and an inflated ego, she then asks Hada to go down on her, and the shy assistant does as she's told. The following day, Mama is in her office when a young schoolgirl visits her unexpectedly. She claims that she wants to see her sister, Liliko, which leaves Mama surprised. Later on, Liliko comes across a letter from her younger sister, Chikako. In the letter, she explains that she had come to Tokyo on a school trip and wanted to connect with Liliko. Chikako managed to obtain her contract info and finally reached out after all these years. Liliko is deeply affected by the letter from her sister, possibly because it stirred memories of the person she used to be before being famous. With Hada's help, the two sisters finally reunite and are overjoyed to see each other. Chikako then praises Liliko for her recent accomplishments and projects. Liliko suddenly encourages her sister to also prioritize her own well-being and enhance her appearance. Chikako then admits she doesn't have the same level of courage as Liliko. Liliko tries to reassure her that beauty brings strength and confidence in people. Back at the clinic, Liliko anxiously undergoes another facelift for her regular touch-up. She then heads to an event where her fans cheer eagerly for her. During the interview, the host asks her about the secret to her beauty. Liliko then responds by claiming she enjoys yoga and Pilates. Mr. Asada watches this interview later and comments that Liliko does everything to please others, even at the cost of losing herself. At that moment, he finally decides to pay her a visit. Following the event, Liliko questions Mama about whether she's been sending money to her family. Liliko doesn't believe her when Mama claims that she has. Mama then admits that the amount sent is very little because most of the money is spent on maintaining Liliko's image. She reveals her intention to get back all the money she's invested in her. Mama reminds Liliko that she should be grateful since she was nothing before they met. Moments later, Liliko is introduced to an up-and-coming model named Kozue. Liliko watches as everyone in the studio praises Kozue, who has quickly garnered attention in the modeling industry. The admiration once directed at Liliko is now focused on Kozue. The two models begin working together, featuring in various TV ads and photo shoots. Kozue becomes an overnight sensation, landing numerous jobs and capturing the hearts of fans who start idolizing her over Liliko. Despite working together with smiles, Liliko becomes increasingly jealous of her colleagues' rapidly growing fame. Liliko's dissatisfaction with her own fading stardom and the realization that Kozue might replace her takes a toll on her self-esteem. Within a few months, Liliko fades into the background and her self-worth crumbles. She even starts taking sedatives and other medications to cope with her withering fame. To make matters worse for Liliko, she discovers that her boyfriend Nanbu has proposed to a politician's daughter. He justifies his decision by explaining that their affluent backgrounds need a match within their own social circles. Despite confessing his love for Liliko, this marriage announcement further breaks down Liliko's already fragile self-worth. One night, Liliko unexpectedly arrives at Hada's apartment where she meets her boyfriend Shin. She immediately flirts with him and boldly asks for permission to kiss him. Shin, who has a crush on Liliko, agrees without hesitation. Hada can only watch helplessly as her boyfriend gets intimate with another woman right in front of her. Following Liliko's orders, Hada and Shin attack Nanbu's future wife and ruin her face. He spills acid on the poor woman's face and flees from the scene with Hada. Liliko then calls them back to her apartment and assures them that this secret will remain between them. Unexpectedly, she asks the couple to make love right in front of her. The next day, Kin-chan is styling Liliko's hair when he notices scars on her back. He chooses not to mention them to her directly and informs Mama instead. She reacts with little surprise and suggests that Liliko's career might actually be coming to an end. Later that night, Liliko meets Nanbu at a hotel and asks about his future wife. He diverts her question and reassures her that he's always loved only her. Elsewhere, Mr. Asada decides to confront Liliko regarding the investigation into the beauty clinic. He then approaches her at her workplace and addresses her as Tiger Lily right from their first meeting. Mr. Asada asks for her cooperation in testifying against the illegal beauty clinic that Liliko frequently goes to. However, she denies any involvement and insists he stop calling her Tiger Lily. Mr. Asada then reveals that he's aware of everything about Liliko, including her involvement in the acid attack. Although Liliko tries to deny it, he asserts that there's a witness who took note of her van's number plate during the attack. He then hands her a file containing evidence against the beauty clinic and Liliko's secrets, leaving her to contemplate her next move. Once at home, Liliko goes through the evidence against the beauty clinic and the suffering of its patients due to negligence. She soon stumbles upon old photos of herself when she was overweight. The difference between her past and present self disturbs her deeply, triggering a severe panic attack. She quickly injects herself with a drug and eventually calms down. Afterward, Liliko boils with anger upon seeing Kozue featured in another commercial. She impulsively orders Hada to disfigure Kozue's face with a knife. Later, Liliko attends a TV show shoot and injects herself with yet another sedative in the bathroom. As the shoot goes on, she begins to hallucinate intensely in front of a live audience. She accidentally knocks over her cake as she desperately fights against studio decorations that seem to come to life. Meanwhile, Hada pursues Kozue to an amusement park and finally catches up with her. She confronts her with a knife and expects her to try and escape. However, Kozue surprises her with a calm demeanor. She states that all models are destined to be forgotten and are replaced one after another. Hada is left speechless by her words and decides to abandon her plan. Liliko discovers that Hada couldn't fulfill her orders and violently assaults her. Overwhelmed with emotion, she storms out into the pouring rain and sits on the curb to collect herself. In her distressed state, she accidentally drops her pills onto the wet pavement, but still takes them from the puddle. Liliko continues to hallucinate intensely as she sits there, reminiscing about her early days as a model. Back inside the apartment, Hada finds the evidence file containing Liliko's secrets and those of the beauty clinic. She decides to mail them, and soon the news spreads like wildfire. The media begins to troll Liliko for her extensive plastic surgeries, while the bruises on her skin worsens every day. Meanwhile, Mr. Asada is suspended from the case due to allegations of leaking sensitive information about Liliko and the beauty clinic. A few days later, Liliko faces a crowd of journalists to address the recent events. The air is filled with the constant clicking of cameras, but everything goes silent as Liliko stands up. To everyone's horror, Liliko pulls out a knife and stabs herself in the eye. She leaves the audience shocked by ending her troubled life in a dramatic manner. The journalists briefly pause in disbelief, but continue taking photos as Liliko collapses to the ground. Following her death, all of Liliko's friends and colleagues are called upon for interrogation. Meanwhile, fans speculate that she might have staged her death and could still be alive. Several months later, Mr. Asada and his colleagues are walking through the city. They run into an attractive girl who hands him her address on a card. To their surprise, it's Shikaku, who, like her sister Liliko, has undergone plastic surgery. Mr. Asada reveals that over 150 patients suffered due to the clinic, with 9 deaths by suicide and 1 person missing, Liliko herself, who mysteriously disappeared. As they continue walking, they see a commercial promoting the release of a book titled The Legend of Liliko. Mr. Asada then notes that Liliko's adventures and influence will continue to resonate. In the meantime, Kozue becomes the beauty icon of Japan after Liliko. Kinji, now her makeup artist, invites her to a club after work. There, Kozue notices Hada dressed unusually and heading towards the basement. Intrigued, Kozue follows her, but soon finds herself in a lavish dressing room. Inside the room, she spots a girl sitting before a mirror on the opposite side. The movie comes to an end as Liliko reveals herself, seated on a throne with one eye patched up.